Hi guys, this video is going to be about the first alpha release of iHUD version 2. Now for those of you that have not used this mod before, iHUD stands for Immersive HUD, and basically it's a mod that hides the heads-up display until you need it. Skyrim's pretty good already. It hides things like your health and your magicka unless you've been using it, but the compass and the crosshair tend to be there all the time. You can disable the crosshair, but then you've not got it when you're shooting or when you're firing spells. Slightly annoying. This mod attempts to make that experience a little nicer. Now this is the second version, basically, version 2. There have been a lot of minor versions, but this is a major overhaul of the mod, and it is only an alpha release. That means it's missing quite a lot of functionality. When you install it, it's dead easy now. There are no options. It really is very simple installation, and I am eventually hoping to have an options menu in-game. But for now, you're going to have to do any options, and there aren't many. You're going to have to do it with console commands. So let's cover the basics. As you can see, there is no compass, but if I press the X key, my compass appears. Press it again, it disappears. You need SKSE, by the way, for this mod. SKSE is essential. And for this reason. It's only SKSE that allows me to detect key presses. Now if X is not a good key for you, you can change it. Just hold the X key down until you get a little message that says release the current key and press the new key you wish to press. Press the new key and it will tell you the new key is set, and you now have a new key set. So that's pretty simple. Now that covers the compass, but there is also crosshair, and by default, I've set the crosshair to be off unless you have a stave or a bow in your hands. As you can see now, I've got a crosshair. If I get rid of the stave again, no crosshair. If I put a bow in my hands, crosshair. If I change to a melee weapon, nothing. So, because you just don't need it. So that's a little bit more immersive. If you use a spell, you get your crosshair again. But, and this is a weakness at the moment, and I'm not sure I'll get around it, but I will try. If I have, this is the invisibility spell, it doesn't really need a target. It does not need a crosshair, so I would like to change the mod in such a way that it only has the crosshair for spells that are targeted. So far that has not been possible, but I'm going to try and find a way around it. Now there are a few options at the moment, and one of them is for the sneak meter. I am not a big fan of the sneak meter, so when you sneak you get this message telling you whether you're sneaking or not. I'm not that keen on that at all. So if you go to the console, to get to console you press the tilde key on the American keyboard. If you've got an international keyboard, as I do, it's probably not a tilde key, but it will be the key to the left of the 1 key. Directly to the left of the 1 key, at least that's where it usually is. That's your console key. And in there type set iHUD sneak meter enabled to 0. That will switch the sneak meter off. So now when I sneak, no sneak meter. There is a small flicker, as you see, when it goes from sneaking back up, I get a crosshair. I am going to try and get around that. I've already come up with one way of doing it, which should work. But just be aware that I am aware of that. However, obviously, when you're sneaking, you may want to pull out a bow and shoot. So you still need your crosshair. So I've still made it now that the crosshair is visible when sneaking, even when the sneak meter is not. So that's pretty useful. But again, if I get rid of everything from my hands, there you go. No crosshair. No need for crosshair and no sneak meter. And again, the glitch with the disappearing crosshair, this one's going to be a little harder. If you've got the crosshair out because you have a weapon and then you sneak, it briefly disappears. That one I'm not sure I'll find a solution for without invading the flash files, and that's a fairly annoying process, and that's what caused the lack of horse combat previously. So I may not fix that, but there you go. Little visual glitch when sneaking. So as I go from not sneaking to sneaking, that is because iHUD has detected you don't want the sneak meter and has hidden it, but has then also realized you need the crosshair, so it's giving it you back. I may be able to speed that up so you don't notice it. So just be aware of that as well. Now there are a few other options, which I will cover now. I'm going to make sure my display opacity is full. Now, what happens if you want the crosshair to be brighter than the compass? You can actually do this now. If I go along to my console and do set iHUD compass alpha and set it to, say, set it to 25. As you can see, the compass alpha has gone right down, so it's very faded, but the crosshair has remained the same. See, I quite like that. I like the compass to be faint and faded, maybe even more so. You can actually get it so it's almost invisible. It's completely up to you how you want it. Let's try 20. And again, the crosshair has stayed the same. Now, in actual fact, you can also change the crosshair, and it's, not surprisingly, set iHUD crosshair alpha 2, and then set it to whatever you want. There you go. And you can actually set it to above 100. If I set it if this is 100, this is basically the same as the default heads-up display. Whatever you've got your heads-up display to, 100 is that. So if you've got your heads-up display already set to about half transparency, 100 will be half transparency. But you can increase the number, say 200, and as you will see, the crosshair is now really bright, really visible. It does seem to have a limit. It doesn't seem to matter what you put beyond a certain amount, so 20,000. But if you want a really defined crosshair but a very faint compass, there you go. You can have that. Now, I do plan on putting some options for the magicka, the health, etc., so they disappear faster. And I'm also going to set it so that you can control the alpha transparencies on those. So perhaps you want them to be very faint as well. Again, with your crosshair being the only thing that's very bright. I'm going to add a lot of options, but for now you'll have to access them through the console. I will eventually make a nice, pleasant menu to use. One other slight thing you will notice, if you're playing with the alpha, when you go up to someone, you'll notice the alpha dips very briefly back to normal and then goes to what you've set it. Again, that's something I'm going to try and speed up, but is not necessarily a huge problem. It's very hard to notice, but now I've pointed out to you, you'll notice it. It's whenever you change cursor type, it goes back to the original alpha and then back to the one you want. I have also made it so that the crosshair appears when you hover over something that can be activated, as you can see there. So if you're picking items up, opening doors, your crosshair will be visible, so you know what you're looking at. I do actually intend to make it so that the crosshair and the message that you can say unlock fade after about 3 or 4 seconds. So for example, what I would like to do is very similar to Fallout New Vegas, is you look at a door, you get the crosshair and you get the message, and then 3 or 4 seconds later that disappears too. That's very useful for setting up screenshots, etc., when near to a lot of people, so that when you run up to people and activate them and then turn around, or say you wanted that screenshot, you wait a couple of seconds and it would disappear. But it's also, for me, it's a little bit more immersive. If I'm standing here for a couple of seconds looking at him, I don't need to know who he is any longer. I've figured it out. So that's also going to be added fairly soon. Now, of course, in the original iHUD, one of the big problems was when the horse combat came out, you lost your heads-up display. I'm just going to change the compass alpha back to something a little bit more visible. You lost the compass and the crosshair. However, now with the latest version, if I don't get a crosshair because I'm using a mace, but as you see, the compass is still there. And if I change to bow, I now get crosshair and the compass. So that has now been fixed, and the reason that is fixed is because this mod no longer replaces the Swift files for the user interface, which means it should be compatible with all future patches, and it's compatible with any other heads-up display altering mod. So coloured map markers, thinner compass, anything that changes the heads-up display layout, it should still be compatible now, because the latest version of iHUD does not replace the flash. What it does is it uses SKSE and scripting to interact with the heads-up display, which is a little more powerful and a lot more flexible, as you can see. And that's about it for this release. I will post details when I get to Alpha 2 with a lot more functionality. And in the meantime, just feel free to post any comments, ask questions, etc., and I will try to answer them. But I hope you enjoy the mod and have fun.